A parent in Northville, Michigan is not happy about the fact that her daughter is reading Anne Frank's diary. Now, there is an edited version and an unedited version, and in her particular school, they're letting the kids read the unedited version. Now, you should keep in mind that her daughter is in 7th grade, so she's in middle school, and the part that she is very uncomfortable with is the part where Anne Frank writes about her vagina. Now, she thinks that it is pornographic and it's too explicit for the students, and the parent, Gail Horlick, says the following. It's pretty graphic and it's pretty pornographic for 7th grade boys and girls to be reading. It's inappropriate for a teacher to be giving this material out to kids when it's really the parent's job to give the students this information. If they watch any kind of movie with a swear word in it, I have to sign a permission slip. It doesn't mean my child is sheltered. It doesn't mean I live in a bubble. It doesn't mean I'm trying to ban books.
Except it kind of does, you know. And I know she just wants to be able to give permission and she thinks this went over the line, but you basically don't want them to read the unedited version of Anne Frank. You're not saying ban it for the world, I get that, but you're saying I don't want my 7th grader to get it.
Here's what she doesn't understand, and it's a little disappointing. Your daughter, who is in middle school, is aware of what a vagina looks like and is aware of what Anne Frank has written. Like, she has experienced the exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
As a middle school, student, you start exploring these things. And it's not like reading a book or not reading a book is going to make a difference. This isn't going to corrupt her mind.
So, two things about the Anne Frank book that's really important. Now, obviously, you read it partly for the things that your kids have not experienced. I mean, obviously, Anne Frank was, hiding out from the Nazis, and it's an amazing story, and it's a story of perseverance and courage, etc. But also, you read it to learn how similar that your kids are to Anne Frank, and that they could be in a similar situation. It helps you relate to people who went through the genocide.
Absolutely.
So both parts of the book are incredibly important. And so as she talks about things like discovering herself, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing in terms of it making the girls think, I had similar thoughts, or, oh, that's interesting, she thought that. And look, if you were talking about 5-year-olds, I'm with you, okay? It might be too serious a material or too graphic, etc. But 7th graders, they already know. Besides which, they watch this show, and we're about to read them the passage anyway. So it's not going to work. There's this thing called the internet. And now when we read you the passage, you're going to see, I don't think it's offensive or pornographic at all.
Especially when you keep in mind that at this point in their lives, they should be taught comprehensive sex education. So that kind of shows you my bias when it comes to this story. Look, they're teenagers, okay? They're starting to explore their sexuality. They need to learn about these things in a responsible way, right? Now, here's the part that the parent had an issue with. Anne Frank wrote, there are little folds of skin all over the place. You can hardly find it. The little hole underneath is so terribly small that I simply can't imagine a man can get in there, let alone how a whole baby can get out.
Hasn't every woman wondered that at some point as they were growing up, when they were girls and they're discovering their bodies, haven't they thought like, wow, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what's like pornographic? And yeah, that's how sex works. A man gets in there and then a baby comes out.
I mean, she's acting as if they're reading 50 Shades of Grey or something.
Yeah.
This is Anne Frank's diary. It was the most memorable book that I read when I was in school. You know what I mean? And to suggest that you cut it down or you edit it and you change it, I don't think you should change it in any way, shape, or form. I'm actually against having an edited version of Anne Frank's diary taught in schools. I think since it's a middle school class, they should be reading the unedited version. They're exploring their sexuality. That's not to say that they're already having sex, but this is when kids become very curious about their anatomy, and that's totally normal. You shouldn't try to hide them from sex, because if you make it this big forbidden thing that they're not allowed to talk about or hear about, that's when they start to rebel and do things that are actually risky.
And it's the height of irony to try to sanitize Anne Frank's diary. The whole point is, what happened to her was tragic. And in all of its humanity, it's what we learn from. And the whole point of reading the book is so that we can learn from it and go, oh, it's a girl just like we know, and look at what she had to go through. Don't sanitize it. Let the kids learn what it really was.